There's a certain tension in the air when a season begins the way this one has. And if you've been watching closely, you can feel it building with every inning. Not because everything is falling apart, but because expectations are high and the margin for patience feels razor thin. 6 games into the year might sound like nothing in the grand scheme of a long baseball season, but when a team drops a series to an opponent they were expected to handle, it naturally sparks reactions. And honestly, that reaction isn't coming out of nowhere. It's rooted in what people believe this stretch of the schedule was supposed to represent. At the same time, it's important to ground that emotion in reality. Baseball has always been a sport defined by inconsistency in the short term. Teams that go on to dominate across an entire season can still stumble early, even against weaker competition. It happens every single year, and yet, when you're in the moment watching it unfold, it never feels acceptable. That's where the frustration comes from. It's not just about the loss itself. It's about the missed opportunity to build early momentum, to stack wins when the calendar is supposed to be more forgiving. And when you look deeper into it, that's really the heart of the conversation right now. How much can you actually take from these first few games? At what point do early trends start to mean something real? Because there's a difference between acknowledging a rough start and jumping to conclusions that define an entire season. The sample size is small, and in baseball, small samples can be incredibly misleading. A couple of good swings, a couple of bad pitches, and suddenly the numbers paint a completely different picture than what's actually happening on the field. That's why there's always this unofficial checkpoint that starts to come into play. Once players begin to accumulate enough opportunities, that's when evaluations start to carry more weight. Before that, everything feels like noise. Some hitters traditionally come out of the gate hot, only to cool off dramatically as the season progresses. Others struggle early and then find their rhythm once they settle in. It's a pattern that repeats itself across the league every year, and it's part of what makes early season analysis so tricky. But even with that understanding, there's still a level of accountability that fans expect to see. Just because it's early doesn't mean performances should be brushed aside completely. If a team looks flat in key moments or fails to capitalize on scoring opportunities, those are things that stand out regardless of when they happen. The difference is in how heavily you weigh them. There's a line between being patient and being complacent, and right now, that line is exactly where the debate is happening. Another layer to this is how the results themselves unfolded. Because it's not just about the record, it's about the way those games played out. If the team had taken care of business in a cleaner, more controlled way, the overall tone would likely be very different. Winning series, even without dominating, tends to quiet the noise. But when losses come in frustrating fashion, when games feel like they slip away rather than being clearly lost, that's when emotions start to amplify everything. And that's exactly what we're seeing. The reaction isn't just tied to numbers on a standings page, it's tied to moments. Missed chances, key situations that didn't go as planned, and stretches where things just didn't click the way they were expected to. Those moments linger, especially early in the season when every game feels like a fresh statement about what this team could be. What makes it even more interesting is that if you zoom out just slightly, the overall picture isn't nearly as negative as it might feel. There are areas where the team has actually performed well, even if it hasn't translated perfectly into results. And that contrast is what creates this strange middle ground where it's hard to fully commit to either optimism or concern. You're not looking at a team that's completely struggling, but you're also not seeing one that's firing on all cylinders. That's where the focus starts to shift toward individual performances. Because within the team's overall start, there are clear differences between players who are finding their rhythm and those who are still searching for it. And in a lineup that was expected to rely heavily on its core producers, the spotlight naturally falls on those bigger names. When they're not delivering at the level people expect, it changes how the entire offense feels, even if the total production isn't necessarily bad. At the same time, there's been an unexpected boost coming from other parts of the lineup. Players who weren't projected to carry a heavy load offensively are stepping up in small but noticeable ways. In limited opportunities, they've provided energy and results that help balance things out. The challenge, though, is determining how sustainable that is. Early success in a small number of appearances can look impressive, but it doesn't always hold as the sample grows. So now you're left with this fascinating dynamic where the numbers might suggest one thing, but the eye test tells a slightly different story. On paper, the offense might rank surprisingly well in certain metrics, but when you watch the games, it doesn't always feel dominant. And that disconnect can be difficult to process, especially for fans trying to figure out what's real and what's just a product of early season variance. And that's really where the conversation starts to intensify, because once you begin questioning which version of the team is the accurate one, every at-bat, every inning starts to feel a little more significant than it probably should this early on. As the games continue to unfold, what really starts to grab attention is how uneven the production has been across the lineup, and that's where the conversation naturally shifts from the big picture to the individual level. Because when you break it down, it's not that the offense as a whole is completely underperforming, it's that the expected leaders of that production haven't fully taken control yet. And when that happens, it creates this lingering feeling that something is missing, even if the scoreboard doesn't always reflect a major issue. You can see it in the way certain at-bats play out. There are moments where the approach looks solid, the contact is there, and the opportunities are being created, but the finishing touch just isn't consistent. That's the kind of thing that stands out more than raw numbers early in the season. It's not always about how many runs are scored, but when they're scored and who's driving them in. Situational execution becomes the lens through which everything is judged, especially when games are tight and every missed chance feels magnified. You can feel it especially in those high-leverage situations where one swing has the chance to change everything. Early in the season, those moments seem to carry even more weight because they shape the narrative. A clutch hit can instantly quiet concerns, while a missed opportunity can reinforce every doubt that's been building. And when a few of those moments don't go your way in a short span, it creates the impression that the issue is bigger than it actually might be. Another factor that plays into all of this is timing, not just within games, but within the schedule itself. This was a stretch where the expectation was to build momentum, to establish a rhythm before facing tougher competition later on. When that doesn't happen as cleanly as anticipated, it naturally leads to questions about whether those missed opportunities could come back into play down the line. Even though it's early, there's an understanding that every game contributes to the bigger picture. And yet, there's still a sense that everything is very much in flux. The identity of the team hasn't fully formed yet, and that's completely normal at this point in the year. Rotations are still settling, roles are still being defined, and players are still adjusting to the pace of the season. That process takes time, and trying to rush conclusions before it plays out can lead to misleading interpretations of what's actually happening. What makes this stretch so interesting is that it sits right at the intersection of patience and expectation. Fans know that overreacting to a handful of games doesn't make sense, but at the same time, they're watching closely for signs of what's to come. Every swing, every inning, every decision feels like a small piece of a much larger puzzle that's still being assembled. And as that puzzle slowly comes together, the focus inevitably sharpens on consistency. Not just in results, but in approach, in execution, and in the ability to respond when things don't go according to plan. Because that's ultimately what separates teams that find success over the long haul from those that struggle to maintain momentum. It's not about avoiding rough stretches entirely. It's about how quickly and effectively you move past them. Right now, that's the phase this team is navigating. There are flashes of what they can be, glimpses of a lineup that can produce at a high level and compete with anyone. But those flashes haven't fully connected yet, and until they do, the conversation is going to continue circling around what's missing rather than what's already working. And that's where the mental side of the game starts to creep in, even this early in the calendar. Hitters begin pressing just a little more in key spots, trying to force results instead of letting the game come naturally. You can notice it in the timing, in the swing decisions, in those borderline pitches that normally would be taken but suddenly get chased. It's a subtle shift, but over a stretch of games, it can be the difference between a lineup that feels in control and one that's constantly trying to catch up to the moment. At the same time, opposing teams start to adjust as well. Pitchers are beginning to identify patterns, testing weaknesses, and forcing hitters to make counter adjustments. That chess match is always happening beneath the surface, but early in the season, it can feel more pronounced because players are still gathering information. Some are quick to adapt and find answers, while others take a little longer to settle in. And during that process, the results can look inconsistent, even if the underlying approach is starting to move in the right direction. So as this stretch continues, the real focus isn't just going to be on the numbers that show up in a box score, but on how those numbers are being built. Are the at-bats becoming more disciplined? Are the opportunities being created more consistently? Are the core players starting to look more comfortable in big moments? Those are the signs that indicate whether this early phase is just a temporary bump or something that needs closer attention as the season begins to take shape. But before we move forward, don't forget to join our channel and give this video a like. Your support helps us keep delivering the latest news about the Los Angeles Dodgers. We'd love to hear your thoughts on the news, so drop a comment below. The buzz around Los Angeles is growing louder, and while nothing has been made official, sources close to the situation suggest the Dodgers may be exploring a bold move that could reshape their infield dynamics. The name at the center of these early conversations is GLEYBER TORRES, a player whose blend of power and versatility has quietly drawn attention across the league. Insiders indicate that preliminary talks have already taken place, with the Dodgers front office evaluating how Torres could fit into their long-term vision for the season. Though still in the speculative stage, the idea of bringing in a proven bat like his signals an aggressive mindset from a franchise that is rarely content to stand still. Torres, known for his ability to impact the game both offensively and defensively, would offer Los Angeles a new dimension in the middle infield. His presence could ease pressure on younger players while adding depth to a lineup already stacked with talent. Observers believe that his right-handed power would play well in the Dodgers system, potentially unlocking even greater production. What makes this situation particularly intriguing is the timing. With teams still assessing their rosters and potential weaknesses, the Dodgers appear to be acting early, positioning themselves ahead of possible competition. While there is no confirmation that a deal is imminent, the mere fact that discussions have begun suggests genuine interest rather than casual inquiry. Around the league, executives are keeping a close eye on these developments. Moves like this, even at the rumor stage, can trigger a chain reaction, prompting other contenders to accelerate their own plans. For now, it remains a waiting game, with fans and analysts alike watching for any sign that talks are progressing beyond the exploratory phase. If the Dodgers do push forward, it would reinforce their reputation as a team willing to make calculated risks in pursuit of another championship run. Until then, the possibility of GLEYBER TORRES in Dodger Blue lingers as one of the most intriguing storylines to follow. That's all for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to stay up to date with exclusive news about the Los Angeles Dodgers, be sure to subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. We always appreciate your comments and feedback. See you in the next video.